The hologram flickered to life in the dim command center of Outpost Delta 7, casting harsh blue light across Leo's weathered face. The Valthor Admiral's towering form materialized, its obsidian carapace gleaming with arrogant perfection, amber eyes glowing with cold calculation. "Human Commander," the Admiral's voice hummed with metallic precision, mandibles clicking faintly. "I am Admiral Zekthor of the Valthor Federation. You will surrender your pathetic world, or we shall reduce it to cosmic dust. You have precisely 72 of your Earth hours to comply." Leo's fingers drummed against the console, a steady rhythm that betrayed his racing thoughts. Around him, the skeleton crew of the dying outpost held their breath. Sparks cascaded from damaged circuits, the acrid smell of burning electronics filling the air. Outside the viewports, the asteroid field they'd been mining for decades stretched endlessly, a graveyard of rock and metal that had become their refuge. "That's quite an offer," Leo said, his voice low and steady, gray eyes never leaving the alien's imposing form. "But I've got a counterproposal." The Admiral's antennae twitched slightly. "You dare negotiate with the Federation? Your species crawls among the stars like vermin, clinging to worthless rocks. What could you possibly offer that would interest us?" Leo's scarred hands moved to the communications array, fingers dancing across the controls with practiced ease. "How about this?" The hologram shattered into fragments as Leo severed the connection, the command center plunging into relative darkness. Emergency lighting cast everything in bloody red, but Leo's crew didn't flinch. They'd served under him for years, through pirate raids and equipment failures, through the slow death of humanity's outer colonies as the Federation tightened its grip. "Well," said Corporal Martinez, manning the sensor station, "that's one way to handle diplomacy." Leo allowed himself a grim smile. Never was much good at small talk. He straightened, squaring his shoulders as he turned to face his people. "Listen up. We've got maybe 6 hours before they send a patrol to check on us. This old mining platform can't fight, but she can still move." "Where are we going, Commander?" asked Ensign Chen, her young face pale but determined. Leo's eyes swept the asteroid field visible through the cracked viewports. "Earth. But first, we're going to remind the galaxy that humans don't surrender. We adapt." The next few hours passed in frantic preparation. Leo's crew stripped the outpost of everything valuable: food, fuel, ammunition, and most importantly, the quantum communicator hidden in the station's core. It was their lifeline to the scattered human colonies, many of whom didn't even know the Federation had declared war. As the last shuttle launched from the outpost's docking bay, Leo stood alone on the command deck. His fingers found the detonation trigger, pausing as he looked out at the stars that had been humanity's dream for so long. Now they were becoming humanity's battlefield. The outpost exploded in brilliant silence, chunks of metal and rock tumbling through the void. But even as the debris field expanded, Leo's convoy was already moving, using the chaos as cover. 3 converted mining barges and a handful of shuttles. It wasn't much of a fleet, but it was a start. "Admiral," Martinez called from the lead barge's bridge, "we're clear of the asteroid field. Course for the inner colonies?" Leo watched the stars wheel past, his reflection ghost-like in the viewport. Somewhere out there, Earth waited, unaware that the galaxy had united against them. But the Valthor had made one crucial mistake. They'd assumed humans would act like every other species they'd conquered. "Set course for Proxima Station," Leo ordered, his voice carrying the weight of command. "It's time to gather the fleet." Behind them, the asteroid field burned with the light of humanity's defiance. The cantina on Proxima Station reeked of recycled air and desperation. Neon signs flickered in a dozen languages, casting shifting shadows across the faces of smugglers, pirates, and worse. Leo sat in the back corner, his gray eyes scanning the crowd while Elle perched across from him, her green gaze fixed on the entrance. "He's late," Elle murmured, fingers drumming against her tactical vest. A faint burn scar caught the light as she turned her head, tracking movement through the crowded bar. "He'll come," Leo replied, though his own fingers tapped rhythmically against the table. "Pirates can't resist a good fight, especially when there's profit involved." The cantina's doors hissed open, and Captain Torvin Reeves swaggered in, his stocky frame cutting through the crowd like a battleship through debris. The jagged scar across his jaw gleamed in the neon light, and his dark eyes swept the room with predatory interest. His patched leather coat marked him as one of the most successful pirate captains in the Outer Rim, which meant he was also one of the most dangerous. Reeves slumped into the chair beside Leo, deliberately slouching as he sized up the two officers. "So you're the commander who told the Valthor to stick their ultimatum where the sun don't shine. I like that in a man." "Captain Reeves," Leo said, extending his hand, "thanks for coming." "Don't thank me yet," Reeves growled, his gravelly voice carrying over the cantina's noise. "I'm here because you promised a fight worth having. My boys are tired of raiding cargo haulers. We want something with teeth." Elle leaned forward, her hands gesturing sharply as she spoke. "The Valthor Federation has 17 active patrol squadrons in this sector alone. Each squadron has enough firepower to crack a moon. They've been hunting pirates for months, and they're good at it." Reeves scratched his scarred jaw thoughtfully. "You're trying to scare me, lady. Why?" "Because I want you to understand what you're getting into," Elle replied, her voice crisp with authority. "This isn't a smash-and-grab operation. This is war against an enemy that outnumbers us 1,000 to 1. "Then why should I care?" Leo spoke quietly, his low voice somehow carrying more weight than a shout. "Because if Earth falls, every human colony falls with it, including the ones your crews call home." Before Reeves could respond, the cantina's lights flickered and died. Emergency lighting bathed everything in red as the station's alarms began to wail. Through the viewports, sleek Valthor patrol ships materialized from quantum-fold space, their hulls gleaming like polished obsidian. "Valthor Patrol," Elle snapped, her coiled energy exploding into motion. "3 ships, assault formation. We've got maybe 2 minutes before they start boarding." The cantina erupted into chaos as patrons scrambled for exits. Reeves was on his feet, his hand on his blaster, but his eyes were calculating rather than panicked. "Your timing's terrible, Commander." "Or perfect," Leo replied, his scarred hands already moving as he activated his comm unit. "Elle, what have we got to work with?" Elle's green eyes swept the cantina, her tactical mind processing options at lightning speed. Maintenance drones in the service tunnels, industrial cutters in the docking bays, and about 50 panicked civilians with more guns than sense. "That'll do." Leo's voice carried the calm authority that had kept his crews alive through impossible odds. "Captain, you wanted a fight with teeth. Here's your chance." Reeves grinned, the expression transforming his scarred face. "All right, Commander, but we do this my way." What followed was pure chaos orchestrated by Elle's brilliant mind. Maintenance drones, reprogrammed on the fly, swarmed through the station's corridors like mechanical hornets. Industrial cutters became improvised weapons, slicing through Valthor armor with surgical precision. The pirates fought with reckless abandon, turning the station's own infrastructure into a weapon. The Valthor boarding parties found themselves facing an enemy that refused to follow any tactical manual. Humans used the station's artificial gravity as a weapon, turned life support systems into traps, and fought with a creativity that left the methodical aliens reeling. When the smoke cleared, 2 Valthor ships drifted dead in space, their crews either captured or evacuated. The third had fled, carrying news of humanity's unconventional tactics back to the Federation. Reeves stood in the cantina's wreckage, bleeding from a dozen minor cuts but grinning like a wolf. "Well, look at that! You actually did it!" "We did it," Leo corrected, offering his hand again. "Question is, are you in?" Reeves clasped Leo's hand firmly, his gravelly voice carrying new respect. "Commander, you've got yourself a fleet, but next time, let's try to find a bar that isn't crawling with bug-faced zealots." Elle smiled, her precise features softening slightly. "I'll see what I can do, Captain." Outside the viewports, the stars watched silently as humanity's first alliance was forged in fire and defiance. The mining colony of Kepler 442c was a testament to human stubbornness, a collection of prefabricated domes and industrial complexes clinging to the surface of a world that barely qualified as habitable. The air was thin, the gravity too light, and the horizon stretched endlessly across rust-colored desert. But beneath the surface lay deposits of rare minerals that made the hardship worthwhile. Elle stood in the colony's command center, her sharp green eyes analyzing the tactical display while miners and pirates crowded around her. The unlikely alliance was already showing strain. The miners, led by a weathered woman named Sarah Collins, viewed Reeves's pirates with barely concealed suspicion. "I don't care how many Valthor ships you say you've destroyed," Collins said, her voice tight with decades of distrust. "Pirates are pirates. You'll rob us blind the moment it's convenient." Reeves slouched against the wall, his scarred jaw working as he controlled his temper. "Lady, if I wanted to rob you, I'd have done it already. Your little rock pile isn't worth the fuel it'd take to haul away." "Enough," Leo said quietly, but his low voice cut through the tension like a blade. "We're not here to relitigate old grievances. We're here because the Valthor are coming." Elle's fingers danced across the holographic display, highlighting the approaching enemy formation. 17 ships, heavy cruiser configuration. They'll be in weapons range in 6 hours. 17 ships? Collins paled. "We've got mining lasers and a handful of security drones. That's not a fight, it's a massacre." "Not if we're smart about it," Elle replied, her hands gesturing sharply as she outlined her plan. "Your mining operation has been excavating these tunnels for 15 years. The Valthor will expect a standard planetary assault, orbital bombardment followed by ground forces. But what if we give them something else?" The next few hours passed in frantic preparation. Elle's tactical genius turned the mining colony's industrial equipment into instruments of war. Ore refiners became improvised missile launchers. Mining drones were reprogrammed as autonomous defenders. Most importantly, the vast tunnel network beneath the colony became a three-dimensional battlefield where human ingenuity could shine. When the Valthor fleet arrived, they found what appeared to be a barely defended mining outpost. The orbital bombardment proceeded exactly as Elle had predicted: methodical, overwhelming, and ultimately ineffective against targets that had already been moved underground. The first wave of Valthor ground forces landed in the ruins of the surface installations, their segmented forms moving with mechanical precision through the debris. They advanced in perfect formation, following tactical protocols developed over centuries of conquest. They walked straight into Elle's trap. The tunnel system erupted with coordinated fire. Mining lasers, repositioned during the bombardment, carved through Valthor armor from unexpected angles. Automated turrets, salvaged from the surface and hidden in the tunnels, caught the invaders in crossfire. But the real surprise was the humans themselves. Miners who had spent their lives in the dark, cramped spaces beneath the surface moved through the tunnels like ghosts. They knew every passage, every junction, every hiding place. What should have been a rout became a nightmare of close-quarters combat where the Valthor's superior technology meant nothing. Elle directed the defense from the command center, her coiled energy channeled into pure tactical focus. Her green eyes tracked dozens of contacts on the display, her precise voice coordinating the defense with surgical precision. "Squad 7, fall back to Junction 15. Squad 3, flank them through the maintenance shafts. Collins, I need those mining charges ready in 30 seconds. The battle raged for hours, but gradually the tide turned. The Valthor, accustomed to fighting in open space or on the surface of worlds, found themselves trapped in a maze where their advantages meant nothing. One by one, their squads were cut off, surrounded, and eliminated. When the last Valthor transport lifted off from the surface, carrying the remnants of the invasion force, the mining colony was still in human hands. The cost had been high, a dozen miners dead, twice as many wounded, but they had proven something important. Humans could win. Collins found Elle in the command center, slumped in her chair with exhaustion. The younger woman's precise features were streaked with dust and sweat, but her green eyes still held their fierce intelligence. "I owe you an apology," Collins said quietly, "and a debt I can never repay." Elle straightened, pushing a stray strand of black hair behind her ear. "You don't owe me anything. We're all in this together now." "Are we?" Collins glanced toward the door, where Reeves was visible in the corridor, his pirates helping to carry wounded miners to the medical bay. "A week ago, I wouldn't have trusted him with my garbage disposal." "People change," Elle replied, her voice softening slightly. "Crisis has a way of showing us who we really are." Outside, the stars continued their eternal dance, but something had shifted in the balance of power. The galaxy's attention was turning toward the small blue world that had spawned such troublesome children. On Earth, people looked up at the night sky and wondered why it seemed so much brighter than before. Part 4. The Ultimate Weapon. The Valthor dreadnought, Inevitable Victory, hung in space like a metallic cathedral, its kilometer-long hull bristling with weapons that could crack continents. Deep within its armored core, the planet killer waited, a weapon that could reduce entire worlds to expanding clouds of superheated plasma. Leo floated in the maintenance shaft, his scarred hands working carefully at the access panel. The stolen Valthor environmental suit was too large for his human frame, but it had gotten him this far. Around him, the ship's walls thrummed with alien power, and the air tasted of ozone and something else, something that made his skin crawl. "Target acquired," he whispered into his comm, the sound barely audible even to himself, beginning approach to the primary core. 3 decks above, Elle's voice crackled through the encryption. "Leo, we're reading massive energy buildup. Whatever that thing is, they're charging it up." Leo's jaw tightened. The intelligence had been fragmentary, a captured Valthor database partly corrupted that spoke of a weapon beyond conventional understanding. But the energy readings were clear enough. In 6 hours, this ship would be in range of Earth. In 7 hours, humanity's homeworld would be a memory. "Copy that. How's our exit strategy looking?" "Terrible," Elle replied with characteristic honesty. "Reeves has his ships in position, but the moment you're detected, this whole sector is going to light up like a supernova." Leo allowed himself a grim smile as he pulled himself through the narrow shaft. "Then I'd better not get detected." The maintenance tunnels of a Valthor ship were a maze of geometric precision, each junction marked with symbols that hurt to look at directly. Leo had studied the stolen schematics until his eyes bled, but being inside the ship was different. The very air seemed hostile, designed for beings whose biology was as alien as their mindset. He paused at an intersection, consulting the crude map he'd memorized. The planet killer's core was 3 sections away, hidden behind layers of armor and defensive systems that made a fortress look like a garden gate. But the Valthor had one weakness. Their obsession with efficiency meant that maintenance access was always available, even to the most critical systems. "Movement ahead," he whispered, pressing himself against the tunnel wall as a maintenance drone drifted past. The machine was beautiful in its alien way, all flowing curves and crystalline sensors, but Leo had learned to appreciate Valthor engineering while planning to destroy it. 20 minutes later, he reached the core chamber. The planet killer defied human comprehension. It wasn't a weapon in any conventional sense. It was a focal point for forces that existed beyond normal space-time. Exotic matter twisted in impossible configurations, held in place by magnetic fields that made his teeth ache. Just looking at it made Leo feel dizzy, as if reality itself was slightly out of focus. But he'd come prepared for this. The scientist had spent weeks analyzing the captured data, her trembling hands steady as she worked out the theoretical framework. The weapon wasn't just powerful, it was unstable, held together by a delicate balance of forces that could be disrupted if you knew exactly where to apply pressure. Leo's scarred hands moved with practiced precision, placing the shaped charges at specific points around the core chamber. Each explosive was barely larger than his thumb, but they were positioned with mathematical precision. Not to destroy the weapon, that would take more firepower than a dozen human fleets, but to destabilize it just enough. "Charges set," he reported, backing away from the weapon. 60 seconds to detonation. "Leo, get out of there. We're reading massive power spikes throughout the ship." But Leo was already moving, his body flowing through the maintenance shafts with the grace of someone who'd spent his life in cramped spaces. Behind him, the planet killer continued its charge cycle, oblivious to the sabotage buried in its heart. 30 seconds. He reached the outer hull, his hands working frantically at the airlock controls. The Valthor security systems were finally starting to notice the anomalies, but confusion bought him precious moments. 15 seconds. The airlock cycled open and Leo dove into space, his stolen suit's thrusters firing at maximum burn. Around him the void stretched endlessly, filled with the cold light of distant stars. 10 seconds. The inevitable victory began to turn, its massive bulk shifting as it tried to bring weapons to bear on the tiny figure fleeing its hull. 5 seconds. Leo closed his eyes, offering a silent prayer to whatever gods protected fools and heroes. 0. The explosions were tiny, barely visible against the dreadnought's massive hull, but they struck at precisely the right moment when the planet killer's exotic matter was at its most unstable. The cascade failure was immediate and catastrophic. The inevitable victory didn't explode, it simply ceased to exist, folding in on itself as the planet killer's energies turned inward. For a moment, a new star blazed in the darkness, then faded to nothing, leaving only expanding gas and the memory of light. Leo's suit tumbled through space, its systems overloaded by the energy discharge, but strong hands caught him, pulling him into the familiar embrace of human technology. "About time you showed up," he gasped, looking up into Reeves' scarred face. "Never leave a man behind, Commander," the pirate captain replied, his gravelly voice unusually gentle. "Besides, Elle would have spaced me if I'd come back without you." Through the shuttle's viewports, Leo could see the expanding debris field that had once been the most powerful weapon in the Valthor arsenal. It wasn't much. One ship destroyed, thousands more still hunting Earth. But it was a start. "Signal the fleet," he ordered, his voice growing stronger. "It's time to go home." Part 5, The Hidden Truth. The captured Valthor officer hung suspended in the interrogation chamber's restraint field, its obsidian carapace reflecting the harsh white lights. Subcommander Klextar was smaller than the Admiral Leo had faced, but its amber eyes held the same cold arrogance that marked all Federation officers. Elle circled the prisoner slowly, her green eyes analyzing every twitch of its antennae, every subtle shift in its segmented limbs. The burn scar on her cheek caught the light as she moved, a reminder of the cost of this war. "You're wondering why we haven't simply killed you," Elle said, her voice precise and clinical. "Your kind would have." The Valthor's mandibles clicked in what might have been laughter. "Humans, so predictable in your weakness. You cling to primitive concepts of honor and mercy." "Do we?" Elle stopped directly in front of the prisoner, her hands gesturing sharply. "We've destroyed 17 of your ships in the past month. We've turned 3 of your colonies into ghost towns. We've made your admiral so desperate that he's calling in reinforcements from the core worlds. Does that sound weak to you?" Klextar's antennae twitched, a telltale sign of agitation. "Temporary victories. The Federation has endured for 10,000 years. Your species is a brief flicker in the cosmic dark." 10,000 years, Elle mused, beginning to pace again. "That's interesting. According to our historical records, the Federation first made contact with humans only 2 centuries ago. Why wait so long to act?" The question hung in the air like a blade. Leo, watching from the observation deck, saw the prisoner's compound eyes narrow fractionally. Even alien body language could be read if you knew what to look for. "Your expansion threatened our trade routes," Klextar said, but its voice lacked conviction. "Try again." Elle's tone sharpened. "We've analyzed your attack patterns, your resource allocation, your fleet deployments. This isn't a territorial dispute or a trade war. This is extermination. The question is why?" The interrogation continued for hours, Elle's empathetic insights allowing her to read the subtle tells that betrayed the alien's emotions. She pressed at psychological pressure points, exploited gaps in its conditioning, and gradually wore down the barriers that protected the Federation's deepest secrets. Finally, with the exhaustion of someone who had carried a terrible burden for too long, Klextar spoke. "The prophecy of ascension," it whispered, its voice barely audible. "Written in the first days, when the galaxy was young and the Federation was merely one species among many." Elle stopped pacing, her coiled energy focused like a laser. "Tell me about this prophecy." "It speaks of the catalyst species, a race that would emerge from the galactic rim, bringing chaos to the established order. They would be adaptable beyond measure, creative beyond reason, and their very existence would herald the end of the Federation's golden age." Leo felt something cold settle in his stomach. Through the chamber's speakers, he could hear the prisoner's labored breathing, the clicking of its mandibles as it struggled with concepts too large for comfortable comprehension. The prophecy gave specific signs, Kleckstar continued. The catalyst would arise from a world of water and stone, their ships would carry the symbols of their fractured unity, and they would turn the very stars against their enemies. When the Council of Hierarchs first received reports of human expansion, they knew. Earth was the prophesied world. You were the species that would destroy everything we had built. Elle's hands had stilled, her sharp gestures frozen as she processed the implications. So you decided to destroy us first. It was logical, necessary. The prophecy could not be allowed to fulfill itself. In the observation deck, Leo's scarred hands clenched into fists. Around him, the Coalition's leaders, miners, pirates, scientists, and soldiers stared at the screens in stunned silence. The truth was worse than they'd imagined. This wasn't just war, it was cosmic predestination, a galactic power trying to prevent its own inevitable decline. "Commander," said Dr. Sarah Chen, the elderly scientist who had become their technological wizard. Her white hair was disheveled, her thick glasses reflecting the chamber's harsh light. "If this prophecy is accurate, if it's guided Federation policy for millennia, then we're not just fighting for Earth," Leo finished grimly. "We're fighting against fate itself." Reeves scratched his scarred jaw, his dark eyes thoughtful. "So they're scared of us. Good. Fear makes people stupid." "Does it?" Collins, the mining administrator, looked pale. "What if the prophecy is true? What if we really are destined to destroy the Federation?" "Then we'd better make sure we're worthy of the responsibility," Leo replied, his voice carrying the weight of command. "But first, we need to understand what we're really dealing with."
Elle had resumed her interrogation, her precise voice cutting through the chamber's tension. "This prophecy, how detailed is it? Does it specify how the Federation falls?"
Kleckstar's antennae drooped with exhaustion. "The texts speak of a great convergence, when the scattered children of the Catalyst world unite under a single banner. The stars themselves will bend to their will, and the established order will crumble like sand before the tide." "And you believe this?" "I have seen your species fight, human. I have watched you turn defeat into victory, chaos into advantage. The prophecy speaks of creatures who thrive on impossibility itself." The prisoner's voice dropped to a whisper. "I believe." The chamber fell silent except for the soft hum of the life support systems. Elle stood motionless, her green eyes fixed on the alien prisoner. Finally, she turned toward the observation deck, her gaze finding Leo's through the reinforced glass. "We need to talk," her expression seemed to say. "All of us." Leo nodded, understanding passing between them without words. The game had changed. They were no longer just fighting for survival, they were wrestling with destiny itself. Outside the ship's viewports, the stars continued their eternal dance, but now they seemed different somehow, less distant, less alien, as if they too were waiting to see what humanity would become. Part 6, Fractured Unity. The command center of the Coalition flagship, Defiance, buzzed with tension, thick enough to cut with a blade. Representatives from a dozen human factions crowded around the central holotable, their voices rising in an increasingly bitter argument. The revelation of the Valthor prophecy had shattered their fragile unity like a hammer blow to crystal. "This changes everything," snarled Captain Marcus Webb, leader of the Titan Mining Consortium. His weathered face was flushed with anger, his fists clenched on the table's edge. "We're not just fighting for our homes anymore, we're fighting against cosmic destiny itself." "Cosmic destiny?" Reeves's gravelly voice cut through the noise like a rusty blade. "It's a bunch of religious nonsense from a species that's been in charge too long. They're scared of losing their grip on power." "Are they wrong to be scared?" Collins's voice was quiet, but it carried across the chamber like a whisper in a tomb. "Look at us. Look at what we've become. 6 months ago we were scattered, divided, barely holding our colonies together. Now we're uniting entire sectors under a single banner."
Elle stood at the edge of the crowd, her green eyes analyzing the group dynamics with tactical precision. The Coalition was fracturing along predictable lines. The pragmatists who wanted to focus on immediate survival, the idealists who saw destiny calling, and the opportunists who wondered if they'd chosen the wrong side.
Leo remained silent, his gray eyes watching each speaker in turn. His fingers drummed against his thigh in that familiar rhythm betraying the calculations running through his mind. Finally, he spoke. Dr. Chen, what's your assessment of the prophecy's accuracy? The elderly scientist pushed her thick glasses up her nose, her blue eyes bright with exhaustion and wonder. From a xenoarchaeological perspective, the texts appear genuine. The linguistic patterns match other Federation historical documents, and the stellar references align with known astronomical events from approximately 10,000 years ago. So it's real, Webb said flatly. We're the monsters they've been waiting for. We're what they fear, Leo corrected, his voice carrying quiet authority. There's a difference. Is there? The question came from Commander Lisa Santos, leader of the Outer Rim Defense Force. If the prophecy is true, if we're destined to bring down the Federation, what does that make us, liberators or conquerors?
Elle finally stepped forward, her hands moving in sharp, decisive gestures. It makes us human. The prophecy doesn't dictate our choices, it predicts them. The Federation fears us because we represent change, adaptation, the end of their static perfection. That's not evil. That's evolution.
Easy words, Webb shot back. But evolution has a cost. Species die out, civilizations fall. How many billions will pay the price for our destiny? The argument might have continued for hours, but the ship's alert klaxons suddenly wailed to life. Red lights bathed the command center as the tactical display flickered to life, showing incoming contacts at the edge of sensor range. Valthor Fleet, reported Lieutenant Hayes from the sensor station. 87 ships, dreadnought configuration. They'll be in weapons range in 4 hours. The coalition leaders fell silent, their arguments suddenly insignificant in the face of immediate danger. Leo stepped to the holotable, his command presence filling the space. This is what we trained for, he said, his voice cutting through the fear. Not prophecies or destinies, but the simple fact that someone wants to kill us and we refuse to die quietly. Elle moved to his side, her tactical mind already analyzing the enemy formation. They're not holding anything back this time. Every ship in the sector, plus reinforcements from the core worlds. Admiral Zekthor is making his final push. Then we'd better make sure it's his last mistake, Reeves growled, his earlier doubts forgotten in the face of battle. What's the plan? The next hour passed in frantic preparation. The Coalition's fractured unity reformed under the pressure of survival, old arguments set aside in favor of immediate necessity. Elle's brilliant mind wove together the strengths of each faction, the miner's knowledge of asteroid fields, the pirate's unconventional tactics, the scientist's technological innovations. But it was Leo who held them together, his quiet authority binding the disparate groups into something greater than the sum of their parts. He moved through the ship like a center of calm in the storm, his presence steadying nerves and focusing minds. The prophecy says we'll unite under a single banner, Collins said quietly, finding Leo alone on the observation deck as the fleet prepared for battle. Maybe it's already happening. Leo's reflection ghosted across the viewport, his weathered features overlaying the star field beyond. Unity born of necessity isn't the same as unity born of choice. When this is over, when the immediate threat is gone, we'll see who stays and who goes their own way. And if the prophecy is right, if we really are destined to reshape the galaxy, Leo's fingers traced the scars on his knuckles, each one a reminder of battles fought and prices paid. Then we'd better make sure we're worthy of the responsibility. Power corrupts, Collins, even the power to do good. Outside, the stars wheeled in their eternal dance, and somewhere among them, the largest Valthor fleet ever assembled moved toward Earth with the weight of prophecy and the fury of a dying age. The battle that would determine humanity's fate, and perhaps fulfill an ancient prophecy, was only hours away. In the command center, Elle stood before the tactical display, her green eyes reflecting the movement of ships in the dance of destiny. Whatever came next, humanity would face it together, united not by prophecy, but by the simple, stubborn refusal to surrender in the face of impossible odds. The stars watched and waited and prepared to witness the birth of a new age. Part 7, Guerrilla Stars. The Centauri Nebula stretched across space like a vast cosmic storm, its swirling gases and electromagnetic interference creating a maze of concealment and confusion. Leo's fleet, if it could be called that, darted through the nebula's depths like fish through coral, using humanity's greatest asset, their refusal to fight fair. Valthor Patrol Squadron, bearing 27 Mark IV, reported Ensign Rodriguez from the sensor station aboard the Defiance. 3 heavy cruisers, standard formation. Leo studied the tactical display, his gray eyes calculating distances and angles. Around him, the bridge crew worked with the quiet efficiency of veterans who had learned to turn desperation into art. Range? 50,000 kilometers in closing. They're following our ion trail. Let them, Leo said, his scarred hands moving across the command console. Signal the Mockingbird and Razor's Edge. Execute pattern Omega-7. What followed was a masterpiece of asymmetric warfare. The Valthor Patrol, expecting to face a conventional fleet engagement, instead found themselves fighting ghosts. Human ships appeared from sensor shadows, struck with devastating precision, and vanished back into the nebula's embrace before return fire could be targeted. The pattern was pure Earth, chaotic, unpredictable, and utterly infuriating to an enemy that relied on mathematical precision. Leo had studied humanity's military history during the long nights between battles, drawing inspiration from guerrilla campaigns stretching back to ancient Terra. Hit and run, strike and fade. Make the enemy fight your war, not theirs. Direct hit on the lead cruiser, Rodriguez reported, his voice tight with excitement. Their shields are down to 60%. All ships converge on target Alpha. Elle's voice cut across the comm from her position at the tactical station. Her hands moved in sharp, decisive gestures, coordinating the attack with surgical precision. Reeves, take your squadron around the starboard flank. Collins, bring your miners in from below. The battle was brief but vicious. The Valthor, trained for fleet engagements in open space, found themselves outmaneuvered and overwhelmed by an enemy that refused to follow any tactical doctrine. When the last alien ship limped away into hyperspace, trailing atmosphere and debris, the human fleet had suffered only minor damage. 3 months, Leo said quietly, studying the after-action reports in his ready room. 3 months of this, and they still haven't adapted.
Elle sat across from him, her black hair disheveled from hours at the tactical station. The burn scar on her cheek seemed more pronounced in the dim lighting, a reminder of how close they'd all come to death. Their entire military doctrine is based on overwhelming force and predictable tactics. We're everything they're not. Chaotic, adaptive, willing to sacrifice efficiency for creativity.
Through the viewport, the nebula swirled in shades of purple and gold, beautiful and deadly. Somewhere beyond its borders, the Valthor Federation was marshaling its forces for another assault, but Leo could see the uncertainty in their movements now. The hunters were becoming the hunted. "Status report from our scouts," Leo asked, his fingers drumming against the desk. "The Hermes returned from the Kepler system an hour ago. Captain Morrison reports 6 more worlds have declared independence from Federation rule. The Zephyrian Trade Consortium has suspended all dealings with Valthor space. Even the hegemony is reconsidering their alliance." Leo's weathered features showed a grim satisfaction. Fear spreads faster than ships. They're realizing that the Federation isn't invincible. "It's more than that," Elle said, her green eyes thoughtful. "We're not just winning battles. We're changing the rules of the game. Every engagement proves that the old ways of thinking are obsolete." The intercom crackled to life, interrupting their conversation. "Commander Leo to the bridge. Priority communication incoming." Leo and Elle exchanged glances. Priority communications in the middle of a nebula meant either very good news or very bad news. They made their way to the bridge where the crew was gathered around the main display. "Sir," Rodriguez said, his voice tight with excitement, "we're receiving a transmission from the Rigel sector. It's General Harrison." Leo felt something cold settle in his stomach. General Harrison commanded the Earth Defense Force, the largest military organization in human space. If he was reaching out to Leo's ragtag coalition, it meant the situation had changed dramatically. The hologram flickered to life, revealing a man in his 60s with silver hair and the bearing of a career military officer. But there was something different about Harrison's expression, a mix of respect and urgency that Leo had never seen before. "Commander Leo," Harrison began without preamble. I'll be direct. 3 days ago, the Valthor fleet launched a massive assault on the Sol system. We stopped them, but barely. They're regrouping for another attack, and our intelligence suggests they're bringing everything they have. Leo's jaw tightened. Earth, humanity's birth world, the heart of their civilization, was under direct threat. What do you need from us, General? Your help, Harrison said simply. More than that, your leadership. What you've accomplished out here, the way you've united the outer colonies, it's remarkable. We need that unity now more than ever. Elle stepped forward, her tactical mind already processing implications. You're asking us to abandon our campaign here and return to Earth. I'm asking you to come home and help us save our species, Harrison replied. The Federation isn't just targeting military assets anymore. They're going after population centers, trying to break our will to resist. Billions of lives hang in the balance. The bridge fell silent except for the soft hum of the ship's systems. Leo stared at the hologram, his gray eyes reflecting the weight of decision. Everything they'd fought for, all their victories in the Outer Rim, would mean nothing if Earth fell. General, Leo said finally, we'll need transport for approximately 15,000 personnel across 47 ships. Can Earth Defense provide escort through the core systems? Harrison's expression shifted to something approaching relief. Already arranged, Commander. Welcome to the war's final act. As the transmission ended, Leo turned to face his bridge crew. These men and women had followed him through impossible odds, had trusted his judgment when conventional wisdom said they were doomed. Now he was asking them to trust him one more time. All ships, he said into the comm, his voice carrying to every vessel in the fleet. Set course for Earth. We're going home. The nebula parted before them like a curtain, revealing the star field beyond. Somewhere among those distant lights, Earth waited. The blue marble that had given birth to humanity's dreams and would now witness either their greatest triumph or their final defeat. Behind them, the Valthor forces that had hunted them through the Outer Rim received word of their departure. Admiral Zekthor's mandibles clicked with what might have been satisfaction. The humans were finally abandoning their guerrilla campaign to defend their homeworld. It was exactly what the Federation had been hoping for, a conventional battle on ground of their choosing, where superior numbers and firepower would decide the outcome. The Admiral began issuing orders for the final assault, confident that the prophecy would be proven false in the ruins of humanity's birthworld. Neither side yet understood that the real battle would not be fought with ships and weapons, but with the very nature of what it meant to be human in a galaxy that had never seen their like before. Part 8, the Nebula Trap. The Horsehead Nebula stretched across space like a cosmic graveyard, its dark tendrils of gas and dust creating perfect concealment for the trap Elle had spent weeks planning. The Valthor Armada, nearly 300 ships, the largest fleet ever assembled by the Federation, approached with the confidence of predators closing in for the kill. Final positions, everyone, Elle commanded from the bridge of the Defiance, her green eyes reflecting the tactical display's glow. Her hands moved in precise, sharp gestures as she coordinated the most complex operation in human military history. Remember, timing is everything. Leo stood beside her, his weathered features calm despite the magnitude of what they were attempting. Around them, the bridge crew worked with the quiet efficiency of professionals who had long since moved beyond fear into a realm of pure competence. Valthor fleet is maintaining formation, reported Lieutenant Chen from the sensor station. Estimated time to engagement 14 minutes. Signal all ships, Leo said, his low voice carrying the authority of command. Execute Phase 1. What the Valthor fleet saw as they entered the nebula was exactly what Elle wanted them to see. A desperate human force, outnumbered and outgunned, making their last stand among the cosmic debris. The Defiance and her escorts hung in space like wounded animals, their energy signatures painting them as easy targets. Admiral Zekthor, commanding from the bridge of his flagship Eternal Dominion, felt a satisfaction that bordered on religious ecstasy. The prophecy would end here, in this graveyard of dead stars, with humanity's dreams shattered against Federation superiority. All ships attack Formation Theta Prime, the Admiral commanded, his metallic voice humming with anticipation. Destroy them all. The Valthor fleet moved with mechanical precision, their ships spreading into the classic envelopment pattern that had conquered 1,000 worlds. But as they closed the distance, the nebula itself began to fight back. The first indication of trouble came when the Federation's sensors started giving contradictory readings. Ships appeared and disappeared from tactical displays, distances became unreliable, and targeting systems struggled to lock onto anything solid. The nebula's natural electromagnetic interference, amplified by human technology, was turning their advanced sensors into expensive paperweights. Phase 2, Elle said quietly, and the trap revealed its teeth. From hiding places throughout the nebula came human ships, not the handful the Valthor had expected, but hundreds of vessels ranging from converted mining barges to sleek pirate corvettes. Dr. Chen's technological wizardry had given them a crucial advantage: adaptive sensor systems that could function in the nebula's chaotic environment while their enemies flew half-blind. But the real surprise was the nebula itself. Elle had spent months studying its composition, mapping its gas flows and electromagnetic patterns. Under her direction, the human fleet had seeded the cosmic cloud with devices that turned its natural properties into weapons. Gravity mines activated as Valthor ships passed, creating localized distortions that pulled the massive vessels off course. Electromagnetic pulse generators, hidden in the debris of dead worlds, overloaded alien systems with cascades of energy. Most devastating of all were the fusion initiators, tiny devices that caused pockets of nebular gas to ignite in brief, brilliant stars. "Direct hit on the inexorable will," Chen reported, her voice tight with excitement. "Their shields are down, atmosphere venting." The Valthor formation, so perfect and precise moments before, began to disintegrate as ships found themselves fighting not just human vessels, but the nebula itself. Admiral Zekthor's mandibles clicked with growing frustration as his tactical displays painted a picture of chaos beyond his comprehension. "How are they doing this?" he demanded of his bridge crew. "Our sensors show impossible readings. Their ships appear to be everywhere at once." "Admiral," reported his tactical officer, "we're detecting massive energy buildups throughout the nebula. The humans have somehow weaponized the entire region." Zekthor's amber eyes narrowed as understanding dawned. The humans hadn't just chosen this battlefield, they had prepared it, turned it into an extension of their fleet. It was a level of environmental warfare that no species in Federation history had ever attempted. "All ships emergency withdrawal," he commanded, but it was too late.
Ella's trap was closing like a cosmic net. Human ships moving through the nebula with the confidence of pilots who had memorized every gas current and gravity well, struck from unexpected angles. The scientists' technological innovations allowed them to coordinate attacks through the electromagnetic chaos, while their enemies struggled to maintain formation.
The battle that followed redefined space warfare. Valthor dreadnoughts, designed to dominate open space engagements, found themselves helpless against enemies that struck from the darkness and vanished like ghosts. Human creativity turned cosmic debris into projectile weapons, used the nebula's own matter as cover, and exploited every weakness in Federation doctrine. Captain Reeves, commanding a squadron of converted pirate vessels, summed up the engagement in his typically blunt fashion. "It's like shooting fish in a barrel if the barrel was on fire and the fish were blind." When the smoke cleared, literally, as pockets of the nebula continued to burn with the light of artificial stars, the Valthor armada was in ruins. Nearly half their ships were destroyed or crippled, the rest fleeing toward Federation space with their confidence shattered. But the victory came with a price. Human casualties were light by the standards of space warfare, but every loss hit the small fleet hard. More concerning was the energy expenditure. The trap had consumed most of their exotic matter reserves, leaving them vulnerable if the Federation regrouped quickly. "Admiral Zekthor is requesting a parley," Chen reported from her station. "He's transmitting on all frequencies." Leo and Elle exchanged glances. A formal parley meant the Valthor were acknowledging humanity as an equal military force, something that would have been unthinkable months before. "Put him through," Leo said. The hologram that materialized on the bridge was subtly different from the arrogant figure they'd faced before. Admiral Zekthor's posture remained rigid, but his amber eyes held something new. Not respect exactly, but recognition of humanity as a genuine threat. "Commander Leo of the Human Forces," the Admiral said, his metallic voice carefully controlled, "I offer terms for the cessation of hostilities." "I'm listening," Leo replied, his gray eyes never leaving the alien's face. "Withdraw your forces to the Outer Rim territories. Accept Federation oversight of your expansion. In return, we will cease active military operations against human colonies." The bridge fell silent. It was more than humanity had dared hope for when the war began. Survival, recognition, a chance to exist in a galaxy dominated by alien powers. "And Earth?" Elle asked, her voice crisp with the precision that had orchestrated their victory. Zekthor's antennae twitched slightly. "Earth will be quarantined, a protected world free from Federation interference but isolated from galactic affairs." Leo was quiet for a long moment, his fingers drumming against his thigh in that familiar rhythm. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of decision. "Counter-offer, Admiral. The Federation withdraws from human space entirely. You leave us alone, we leave you alone. But Earth remains free to engage with whatever galactic powers we choose." "Impossible. The prophecy—" "The prophecy is your problem, not ours," Leo cut him off. "You've seen what we can do when cornered. Ask yourself if you really want to find out what we're capable of when we have room to breathe." The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the bridge in contemplative silence. Outside the viewports, the nebula continued to burn with the light of artificial stars, a monument to human ingenuity and the price of underestimating Earth's children. "Think he'll accept?" Reeves asked from the tactical station.
Elle smiled, her precise features softening slightly. "He'll consider it. That's more than we had yesterday."
But even as they celebrated their victory, long-range sensors were detecting new movement in Federation space. The Valthor were regrouping, calling in forces from across their empire. The real test was yet to come. Part 9, The Final Gambit. The Sol system blazed with the light of war. Around Earth's azure sphere, the combined fleets of humanity, military vessels, converted civilian ships, and Leo's battle-hardened coalition formed a defensive perimeter that stretched from Mercury's orbit to the asteroid belt. It was the largest gathering of human forces in history, and it might not be enough. Leo stood on the bridge of the Defiance, now serving as the flagship for the entire human fleet. Through the viewports, he could see the approaching Valthor Armada, over 1,000 ships representing every major power in the Federation. This wasn't just an invasion, it was a crusade, fueled by prophecy and desperation. Final count confirms 1,237 enemy vessels, reported Commander Santos from the tactical station. Everything from scout frigates to the new Apocalypse-class worldbreakers.
Elle moved through the command center like a dancer, her green eyes tracking dozens of tactical displays simultaneously. Her hands gestured sharply as she coordinated with fleet commanders across the system, turning chaos into symphony.
"Admiral Harrison, position your dreadnoughts in the outer perimeter. Captain Reeves, take your fast attack squadrons and harass their flanks. Collins, your mining ships need to be ready with those surprise packages we discussed." Leo watched the tactical display with the calm of a man who had already accepted the magnitude of what they faced. Every ship in the Valthor fleet was larger and more powerful than anything in humanity's arsenal. Their only advantages were experience, desperation, and the kind of tactical flexibility that came from having nothing left to lose. "Incoming transmission," announced Lieutenant Rodriguez. "It's Admiral Zekthor." The hologram materialized with its familiar arrogance intact, but Leo could see the subtle signs of strain, the way the Admiral's antennae twitched, the almost imperceptible tremor in its segmented limbs. The defeat at the nebula had cost the Valthor more than ships. It had cost them their certainty. "Commander Leo," Zekthor said, his metallic voice carrying across the bridge, "this is your final opportunity to surrender. Abandon Earth, and your colonies will be permitted to exist under Federation supervision." "You're assuming we lose," Leo replied calmly. "That's a dangerous assumption, Admiral. Ask the crews of the ships we left burning in the Horsehead Nebula. This is different. Here in open space, your tricks and ambushes mean nothing. We have overwhelming firepower, superior technology, and the blessing of prophecy itself.
Ella stepped forward, her voice cutting through the tension with surgical precision. Prophecy? You mean the ancient text that predicted Earth's rise to galactic prominence? The one that foretold the end of the Federation's golden age?
Zekthor's amber eyes narrowed. The prophecy speaks of destruction, human, of chaos unleashed upon the galaxy. We are here to prevent that future. Are you, Leo asked quietly, or are you here because you're afraid of losing power? Before the Admiral could respond, the ship's sensors detected new contacts at the edge of the system. But these weren't more Valthor vessels. They were ships Leo had never seen before, sleek craft that seemed to bend light around their hulls. Unknown vessels dropping out of hyperspace, Santos reported, his voice tight with confusion. Configuration unknown, energy signatures, I've never seen anything like this. The new ships took position between the human and Valthor fleets, and a new voice crackled across all frequencies. Ancient, weary, but carrying absolute authority. Valthor fleet, this is Keeper Zephon of the Progenitor Council. By ancient law and sacred covenant, you will stand down immediately. Leo felt the air leave his lungs. The progenitors, the legendary first species, the beings who had seeded the galaxy with civilization before vanishing into myth. Every child in human space had heard the stories, but no one believed they still existed. Admiral Zekthor's hologram flickered with what looked like panic. Keeper, the humans threaten the established order. The prophecy you have spent millennia misinterpreting, the ancient voice replied with cutting finality. You have violated the Prime Covenant, Admiral. You have attempted genocide against a developing species. This ends now. Respected Keeper, Elle said, her voice carefully formal, humanity appreciates the intervention, but we don't need protection. We can fight our own battles. Silence stretched across the void, filled only by the background hum of 1,000 ships holding position. When the progenitor spoke again, there was something that might have been amusement in its tone. Yes, young ones, we know. We have been watching your species since you first reached beyond your world. Your adaptation, your refusal to surrender, your capacity to turn disadvantage into strength, these are rare gifts in the galaxy. Zekthor's form seemed to shrink as understanding dawned. The prophecy, it wasn't a warning, it was a promise. The catalyst species, the Keeper confirmed. Foretold since the first days when we realized that stagnation would eventually claim all civilizations. The galaxy needs change, Admiral. It needs the chaos of growth, the disruption of new ideas. The humans are evolution in action. Leo stepped forward, his gray eyes fixed on the alien Admiral. You wanted to prevent the prophecy, but you've actually fulfilled it. Every attack on our colonies, every attempt to destroy us, has only made us stronger and more united. You've created the very threat you feared. The Valthor fleet hung in space, caught between human defiance and progenitor authority. Admiral Zekthor's hologram flickered as competing impulses warred within the alien's mind. Duty to the Federation, fear of the prophecy, and now the terrible recognition that resistance might be futile. What happens now? Santos asked quietly.
Ella's eyes were fixed on the tactical display, where the disposition of forces painted a picture of galactic transformation. Now we find out what kind of species we really are. The progenitors have given us recognition, but that's just the beginning. The real test is what we do with it.
Leo nodded, understanding the weight of the moment. Humanity had won more than just a military victory. They had achieved something unprecedented in galactic history. They had forced the galaxy's oldest powers to acknowledge them as equals, not through conquest or intimidation, but through sheer, stubborn refusal to be anything less than what they were. Admiral Zekthor, Leo said, his voice carrying across the void to every ship in both fleets. The choice is yours. You can continue this war and face the consequences, or you can accept that the galaxy has room for more than one way of thinking. The response would reshape the balance of power throughout known space, but Leo was no longer worried about the outcome. Win or lose, humanity had already achieved something remarkable. They had made the galaxy take notice. And once the galaxy noticed humanity, it would never be quite the same again. Part 10, A New Dawn. 6 months after the Battle of Sol, Leo stood on the observation deck of the Defiance, watching Earth turn slowly beneath him. The blue marble looked the same as it always had, but everything else had changed. Ships from a dozen different species shared orbital space with human vessels, their varied designs creating a tapestry of galactic diversity that would have been unimaginable a year ago. Elle joined him at the viewport, her black hair longer now, no longer tied back in the severe style of wartime. The burn scar on her cheek had faded, but the sharp intelligence in her green eyes remained undimmed. "The Centauri delegation just arrived," she reported, her voice carrying the same precision that had orchestrated humanity's greatest victories. "That makes 17 species requesting formal diplomatic relations." Leo smiled, the expression transforming his weathered features. "Remember when our biggest worry was whether the miners and pirates would work together?" "Simpler times," Elle agreed, her own smile softening her precise features, "though I'm not sure I'd call them easier." The war had ended not with humanity's destruction, but with the Valthor Federation's gradual dissolution. Admiral Zekthor, faced with progenitor disapproval and the undeniable reality of human resilience, had chosen pragmatism over prophecy. The formal ceasefire had evolved into trade agreements, then mutual defense pacts, and finally something unprecedented in galactic history, a truly multi-species alliance built on equality rather than dominance. "Status report from the outer colonies?" Leo asked, though he already knew the answer. It had become their ritual, this daily confirmation that the dream they'd fought for was still intact. "All colonies reporting stable. New Harmony is establishing trade relations with the hegemony. Kepler Station has become a major diplomatic hub. And Captain Reeves—" Elle paused, her expression amused. "Captain Reeves has gone legitimate. He's running a shipping company now." Leo chuckled. "I'm sure he's finding legal commerce just as adventurous as piracy. More profitable, according to his last report." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the dance of ships around Earth. The planet that had once been isolated on the galactic rim was now becoming something else. A nexus, a meeting point where species that had never spoken to each other were learning to find common ground. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if we'd taken their first offer?" Elle asked. "Quietly accepted Federation oversight, settled for survival?" Leo considered the question, his fingers tracing the familiar scars on his knuckles. "We wouldn't be human anymore, not the way we understand it. Fear makes you small, Elle. It makes you accept less than you're worth. And now we're something the galaxy has never seen before. Not conquerors or supplicants, but partners, equals." The door chimed, and Dr. Chen entered the observation lounge. The elderly scientist moved with more confidence now, her white hair neatly arranged, her blue eyes bright with the satisfaction of work well done. Behind her came Collins and Reeves, the unlikely alliance that had somehow saved humanity. "The council meeting is ready to begin," Chen announced. "Representatives from 43 species, all waiting to hear humanity's proposal for the new Galactic Compact." Leo turned from the viewport, his gray eyes taking in the faces of the people who had stood with him when the galaxy itself seemed arrayed against them. Miners and pirates, soldiers and scientists, united not by destiny or prophecy, but by the simple refusal to surrender what made them human. "Are we ready for this?" Collins asked. The former mining administrator had become Earth's first ambassador to the Galactic Council, her practical experience with managing difficult personalities translating surprisingly well to interspecies diplomacy. "As ready as we'll ever be," Reeves replied, his scarred face showing the confidence that had carried them through impossible odds. "Besides, it's not like we're asking for anything unreasonable, just the right to exist as ourselves." Elle smiled, her hands moving in the sharp, decisive gestures that had become her trademark. "The right to exist, the right to grow, the right to change. The galaxy's been stagnant for too long. It's time for something new." Leo nodded, feeling the weight of history on his shoulders. The progenitors had called humanity the catalyst species, and perhaps they were right. But catalysts didn't dictate the reaction, they simply made it possible. "Then let's go show them what humanity can offer," he said, leading the group toward the conference chamber where representatives of nearly 50 species waited to reshape the galaxy's future. As they walked, Leo caught a glimpse of Earth through another viewport. The blue marble continued its eternal rotation, unaware that it had become the center of a new kind of galactic civilization. Children on the surface looked up at stars that no longer seemed so distant, so alien. Humanity had earned its place among them not through conquest or submission, but through the simple, stubborn insistence on being exactly what they were. In the years that followed, historians would debate the exact moment when the old galactic order gave way to something new. Some would point to the Battle of Sol, others to the Progenitor intervention, still others to the signing of the new compact that established the Galactic Partnership. But Leo knew the truth. The change had begun the moment he'd looked at Admiral Zekthor's ultimatum and decided that humanity's answer would be written in starfire rather than surrender. The galaxy had tried to make humanity choose between survival and identity. Instead, humanity had chosen to prove that sometimes the two were the same thing. Outside the viewports, the stars continued their eternal dance, but now they danced to a rhythm that included the heartbeat of Earth, wild, unpredictable, and utterly defiantly human. The prophecy had been fulfilled, but not in the way anyone had expected. Humanity hadn't destroyed the old order through conquest or chaos. They had simply shown the galaxy that there was another way to be, another way to think, another way to reach for the stars. And the galaxy, after 10,000 years of stagnation, had finally begun to learn. End of Earth's defiance, a galaxy united against us.